Are you still performing a version of yourself that other people can survive? There's a version of yourself you may have built without realizing it. Not because you were fake, not because you were manipulative, not because you lacked authenticity, because somewhere along the way your raw self became too difficult for the people around you to interpret. So you learned to become easier to understand, easier to manage, easier to approve of, easier to explain, easier to love without discomfort, easier to keep inside the family story, the friend group, the workplace, the relationship, the room. You performed a version of yourself that they could survive. What does survive mean here? It does not mean they would literally die if you stopped performing. It means they might not be able to maintain their preferred reality if you showed up unedited. They might not survive you becoming honest without making you the problem. They might not survive your boundary without calling it rejection. They might not survive your stillness without calling it coldness. They might not survive your clarity without calling it arrogance. They might not survive your withdrawal without calling it abandonment. They might not survive your refusal without calling it cruelty. They might not survive your success without minimizing it. They might not survive your grief without trying to fix it. They might not survive your anger without making you dangerous. They might not survive your joy without needing to own it. They might not survive your difference without diagnosing it. They might not survive your silence without filling it with accusation. To survive you in this sense means to keep their version of you and reality intact. So the performance begins. You decided to soften the sentence before anyone reacted. You laugh so the room does not feel the weight of what you said. You over-explain so no one can accuse you of being harsh. You shrink the accomplishment so no one feels threatened. You hide the need so no one feels burdened. You make the boundary sound like an apology. You turn the no into a paragraph. You smile when you are done. You stay when the body is complete. You say it's fine because saying this does not work for me would rupture the script. Over time, this becomes automatic. You do not think I am performing now. You simply feel the invisible pressure to become readable before you speak. You shape your tone before the truth leaves your mouth. You scan the room before you know what you feel. You ask yourself, how will they take this, before you ask, is this true? That is the performance layer. It often begins in ordinary moments. A child is quiet and the adults ask why they're being rude. A teenager is overwhelmed and the family calls them dramatic. A friend says no, and the group treats it like betrayal. A woman speaks clearly and people call her intimidating. A man shows sadness and people change the subject. A worker names a problem and leadership calls them negative. A partner asks for space and the other person collapses. A person stops caretaking everyone and suddenly they are accused of becoming selfish. After enough repetitions, the nervous system learns the rule. My actual state is too disruptive. I must translate myself before I am seen. That translation can look like kindness, and sometimes it is. But sometimes it is fear wearing good manners. Sometimes it is not generosity, it's preemptive self-erasure. The difficult part is that the performance often gets rewarded. People call you thoughtful because you anticipate their discomfort. They call you easygoing because you do not name your limits. They call you wise because you turn your pain into something useful for them. They call you strong because you do not ask for much. They call you loving because you absorb the emotional cost of every room. They call you mature because you have learned to abandon yourself quietly. And because the reward feels like belonging, you keep doing it. Until one day the body starts refusing. The laugh does not come as easily. The apology tastes wrong in your mouth. The over-explaining feels humiliating. The room feels too expensive. The role feels too small. The old sentence rises, I'm fine. And something in you says, no, we are not saying that again. This is where many people think that you are becoming cold, difficult, selfish, or detached, but often they are simply losing the ability to form a version of themselves that keeps everyone else comfortable. That loss can feel destabilizing because the performed self had a job. It kept the peace, it prevented conflict, it protected you from being misread. It preserved access, it kept family systems running. It kept friendships familiar, it kept relationships from facing their own imbalance. When that version starts to fall away, some people will not know what to do with you. They may say you changed, they may say you are not as warm. They may say you are hard to reach. They may say you are making everything complicated. They may say they miss the old you. And the truth may be, they miss the version of you that managed their discomfort for them. That does not mean they are bad, it means the arrangement depended on your performance. So the question becomes, who are you when you stop being the version other people can easily survive? You may be quieter, you may be more direct, you may be less available. You may disappoint people faster, you may stop explaining every boundary. You may stop making your clarity sound gentle enough to be approved. You may stop turning every truth into something emotionally convenient. You may stop entering rooms that require you to become smaller before you sit down. This does not require cruelty, it requires precision. You do not have to attack people to stop performing for them. You can say that does not work for me and stop there. You can say I'm not available for that and stop there. You can say I need to leave now and stop there. You can say I understand you feel that way, but my answer is still no and stop there. You can say nothing when silence is clearer than translation. The point is not to become unreadable on purpose. The point is to stop betraying yourself in order to be interpreted comfortably. Some people can survive the real you, not because they understand it, but because they do not need to control the parts they do not understand. They can hear your no without making it abandonment. They can witness your stillness without calling it rejection. They can receive your clarity without demanding you soften it into reassurance. They can let you be different without turning difference into a threat. Those are clean relationships, not perfect relationships, clean ones. The others may require a version of you that is no longer available. That is not your failure. It is structural information. Because if someone can only love you when you are translated, softened, muted, useful, apologetic, and easy to digest, they are not relating to your actual self. They are relating to your survival performance that you built for them. And maybe it did keep you safe once. Maybe it helped you get through childhood, family systems, social groups, workplaces, marriages, churches, communities, or friendships where rawness was punished. Honor that. The mask had a function, but function is not identity. At some point, the question is no longer, how do I become easier for them to survive? The question becomes, what part of me has been waiting for me to stop translating? Because there's a cost to being endlessly survivable. You become acceptable but exhausted, loved but unseen, included but distorted, praised but used, present but not actually there. The return begins when you stop offering the edited version as the primary one. Not dramatically, not with a speech. Sometimes it begins with one clean sentence, one unsoftened no, one early exit, one refusal to over-explain, one moment where you let someone feel their own discomfort without rushing to rescue them from it. This is when the performance starts to end. Not everyone will like it, but not everyone has to. Because you are not here to be a version of yourself that preserves everyone else's reality. You are here to be informed without self-erasure. The people who can meet that will adjust. The people who cannot will reveal the contract they preferred. And you will finally know the difference. I no longer perform the version of myself others can survive. I do not translate truth into comfort. I do not soften clarity to preserve false peace. The mask was protection, not identity. What cannot survive my realness cannot govern my form.